In this section, we're going to discuss CSS, Cascading Style Sheets. We're going to discuss how you can use CSS to alter the appearance of text within your document. I've already created a simple web page, and you'll see there isn't much design to it. This web page includes information about a couple of our courses from Learn to Program. So here is Design for Coders, and we scroll down. We've got information about Ajax development and CSS development. So you can see we've got a picture of the course author and then a longer description of the course itself here in text. But there's no design to this. What's determining the look of the page right now is the default style sheet. The default style sheet is a set of styles that are within the browser internals that determine what content will look like if no other styles are applied. So the default style sheet exists in every browser, and each browser renders its default style sheet similarly. For example, let's take this course page, and let's go ahead and I'll open a Firefox window. We were looking at Google's Chrome browser. We'll enter the same address, which happens to be a local address on my hard drive, and you'll note that these are extremely similar in appearance, if not exactly the same at this point. And again, that's because each browser has a default style sheet, and it's using that default style sheet to determine exactly how the page should look. So before we add our CSS styles, let's take a quick look at the HTML I've already written, just so we're familiar with what's here. So after our doc type, of course, we have our HTML tag and the head of the document. We have a title element here. The title is Courses. And then in the body, we have a div or logical division called Courses. A logical division, or div, is just a way to separate your content within the document. Notice the logical division ends here on line 30. So this entire page is contained within this logical division. Now, the logical division has an ID called Courses. I always recommend, as a best practice, when you have a div tag and you close it, you put a comment next to the closing div tag, which just indicates which div you're closing, which is Courses in this case. This way, if you have divs inside divs, you won't get confused later. Okay, so now let's go back to reviewing what we've got. So if we go back, we then list our 3 courses. The first is Design for Coders. I've put the name of the course in an H2 tag, heading 2, and this is a link. So if the user clicks on it, the Design for Coders text, they're going to go to this URL. And there's Design for Coders, the actual text, the end of the link, and the end of the H2 tag. We have our author enclosed in H3 tags. And then we have our paragraph descriptions. Each description is within paragraph tags. Note the P and the closing P here. But also we have an image of the actual author that's displayed using this image tag and the source attribute. Joe.jpg is the file. And if we were to look in the actual course folder, you will see all of these files. Just got that opened up. So there's our courses HTML. There's joe.jpg, mark.jpg, and zach.jpg. All the files necessary to construct the page. Let's move this back into view here. Then we have our additional paragraphs of content. And then once we have those, we go on to the next course, which is Ajax development, and the next author. So rendered in the browser, again, looks like this. So what we're going to do now is we're going to attach a style sheet so we can adjust the styles for our content. Now, there's a couple of ways to attach styles, 2 of which I recommend, 1 of which I don't. The way I don't recommend is to embed the styles here. You might see some older code that looks like this. It's got a style in here, and let's say font family : Arial. And if we take a look at this in the browser, now that I've added that, watch, because we've added this to the name right here, Joseph Caserta, watch what happens when we save And now notice Joseph Caserto is in the Arial font. Or we could set this to Georgia. And now it's in the Georgia font. Or one last example, Verdana. And there it is in the Verdana font. So this is an embedded style where the style goes with the HTML tag. We almost never want that. So let's take that out. If you see that, that's actually a bad coding practice. The one exception is sometimes in HTML code that's going to be viewed through an email client. You'll sometimes see the styles embedded there, and that's okay. The second way to do it is to put a style sheet in the head. And that's what we're going to do. So there's our style sheet. Opens with the style tag, closes with the style tag. Now, since we're using the HTML5 standard, style is all we need. In older standards, you actually needed to have a couple of attributes there, and you'll commonly see those in older code or code that's not written for the HTML5 standard. So here in the style sheet, what I'll do is I'll write selectors and rules that decide how certain elements will appear. So for example, let's write an H2 selector. Now, whatever style rules I put in here will be applied to all of the H2 tags. So there's our H2 tags, H2 tags. Now notice here too, though, inside our H2 tags are anchor tags. So that may affect how these appear. And let's go ahead and let's do a rule for our H3 tags too. So right where my cursor's flashing is where I'll put the H2 styles. So this type of style sheet in the header is real common. Now the third type of style sheet that you'll see frequently is an attached style sheet. And that's where the style sheet itself is in a separate file. You can learn how to use an attached style sheet in our full HTML and CSS course, or our course called Become a Certified Web Developer. All right, so now let's go here into the H2 and let's write that same font family code. And let's use Arial. Now, sometimes you want to have a backup in case the user doesn't have Arial. So our backup will be Helvetica. And our third backup will be any sans serif font, any font that doesn't have the little feet on the end of the letter forms. So once we save, let's take a look. And notice now Design for Coders is in that sans serif, but so is Ajax Development and CSS Development with CSS3. And again, the reason for that is that we've said, okay, all of our H2 tags should match this rule. Now our H3 tags, let's say we wanted them to appear the same way. So we could say font family, Arial, Helvetica, and again, sans serif. So now our H3 tags, which are the author's names, also have that same characteristic. Now, oftentimes, we're also going to want to be able to control the font size. So let's say we wanted our course titles to be bigger and our authors' names to be a little smaller. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set the font size. Now, there's a number of ways to measure the font size, but the most common is in something we call M's. Now, if you're a graphic designer, M's don't mean the same thing in CSS that they mean in traditional typography. 1M is 100% the size as it's defined in the default style sheet. So if I do this, and we save, and we look again at those H2s, notice now it's small because it's that standard size 12, which is standard in this particular style sheet. If we do 2M, that's going to be 200% of the size, and obviously much bigger. Let's go for 2.5M. Just like that. And let's go for the authors. Let's go for something a little bit smaller. Let's go for 0.8M. Let's make it 0.8M just for consistency. And notice the author's names get smaller. Now for our main body text here, we can do this several ways. Now you notice the main body text is always in P tags for paragraph. So we can go right here and we can set up a P tag rule, just like this. And let's say we want our main font to be Georgia. And if not, Georgia Times or any serif font. And let's say for a font size, we want to go something smaller, 0.8M. And let's see what we get. Oh, that's a good size. That looks pretty nice. So now you'll notice how our image is kind of in line with the text. Here's a little trick to get the text to wrap around the image. On the image itself, I'm just going to go in here and I'm going to use the align attribute, and I'm going to hit align left. And notice how the text wraps around. We'll space this out a little bit better in a bit, but for right now, we've got the text aligned. So let's go ahead and set that align left on all of the images. Now notice here, I'm not using CSS for this. We could use this during CSS, but this is a really common trick that's used to align the text. And let's get our last one. Good. All right, so now our text should kind of wrap around our authors. Very nice. So we've changed most of the typography. The last thing I want to do is remove the underline from the links. Right now, these are all links, and if we clicked on them, they'd go to the landing page for this particular course. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove that underline. Now, anchors are a bit different when we use these in CSS. Notice we've matched the H2 tag with an H2 selector, the H3 tag with an H3 selector, and the paragraph tag with the paragraph selector. So the anchor tag, because anchors have various states, and what I mean by that is you'll notice that right now our anchors are purple and underlined, and that's because these are visited links. On the default style sheet, unvisited links are blue, like this one, and visited links are purple, like this one, and they're all underlined. So let's say I don't want any of these to be underlined. So I'm going to set the text decoration to none. And notice the underline disappears. And I'm going to make the color black. So now they look exactly like I want them to. However, there's no way for the user to know that these are links. If they point at them, they don't know they can click on these. So we want to give them some indication that they can click on them. So we can also set pseudo selectors for the link for the different states. So a plain link, we select it like that. A link that has been visited, we use this selector, V-I-S-I-T-E-D. Visit. Got to spell this stuff correctly. And the final state is :hover. So we can now write CSS to change these states. So what I'm going to do is here in hover, I'm going to go ahead and make these become red. So color red. So now when we point at any of these, they'll change colors so the user knows that they're a link. I don't particularly like the red. Let's go something a little more subtle. Let's go with gray. There we go. So a little more subtle. And that looks good. So in this video, we created and used an internal style sheet placed in the document header to alter the text properties of our document.